Now, I have mentioned this in previous videos. The reason I leave that flat on top is for the clamps. We've got 100% contact. We used our splicing template to check the floor of the dado, of that elliptical dado, before we glued this in. We've hopped right over all that damage, and we've tied this portion of the neck into this portion of the headstock where there was no structural challenge. Once that second spline is in there, this neck will be much stronger than the day it left the factory. We're picking up where we left off, and we'll set up to do that second spline. I'm not too sure where this guy was heading. Like, there's a hole in here. There's a chunk of probably maple, I guess, in here. Another piece of maple here, and a dowel here. I have no idea what this guy was thinking. But as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter, because you can see our spline starts a good 3.5 inches past that initial damage. And then on this side, it runs another couple of inches, and you've got the full depth of that wall. So we're just hopping right over this. When I get the guitar before anyone else has taken a run at it, I always use hot hide glue. But in this case, I will use the yellow aliphatic glue. Now, our next hide glue job was this J-30 that Danny sent down from Kirkland Lake, and we re-glued the head brace on this one. Good, all right, that's good and solid all the way across. So this guitar will also be getting a new bridge, so we're going to heat that up today, slip that off, and make a duplicate bridge. Now we are back to the J-30 now. We're heating this bridge up. We're going to slip that off and make a replacement bridge. And as always, I'll walk you through this step by step. This is how I make a bridge. So we're going to start with this blank that I just squared up. That edge has been jointed, so I'm using that as the leading edge. Of course, I've got that piece of masking tape because it's pretty hard to see any line on that dark rosewood. So I will cut this on the bandsaw, clear the lines. So you can see I'm going with a slightly thicker profile than this bridge that was on there. And as I mentioned earlier, that's going to give us more support for that saddle as we raise it up the height that it needs to be for the strings to clear the new neck angle and the new bigger frets. So this is our next step. So what I'm doing is I'm through drilling the first string bridge pin hole and the sixth string bridge pin hole. This is exactly the size of that hole. You don't want to death grip that bridge. Just hold it very lightly and let the drill bit find its own center. Middle 4 holes I drill after the bridge is glued onto the guitar. But I will spot those holes just to make sure we get the centers. Now again, that drill bit is exactly the right size. I'm holding the bridge loosely, letting the drill find its own center. Yeah, so now we've got a perfect match, hole to hole, center to center. The two outside pinholes are through drilled because they're going to hold the bridge in place as the glue sets. So now we're ready to cut the perimeters. I'm going to cut this a little shy on the bandsaw and then I'll come back. So the next step is to line up those ramps, and we're going to cut those right now on the end of the edge sander. So you can see that original bridge is quite flat on top. So I will not put any type of bevel on that surface. I'm going to leave it dead flat. And this is just very softly turned. I've added just a little tiny bit to give us a little bit more stability there. Now there's a reason that I leave it this thickness, because we have not radiused the foot of the bridge, and we are just about to do that now. Over to the radius sander. I'm going to take a minute and switch the drill press back to the radius sanding disc. It's pretty quick. Platform drops into place like so. We'll open that chuck wide enough to be able to receive the hex drive. I'm loosening off the table. Now I'll raise the table up for that hex drive to coincide with the 3 jaws of the chuck. You always got to remember to tighten that table before you tighten the chuck. Now you rotate this because it helps the 3 jaws of the chuck align with that hex drive in the disc as you snug it down. Okay, good. It has engaged. Now we snug that down. I clamp the platform to the table, and voila. I have my own sort of dust collection set up here. That's my dust collector. I'm going to go flick that on. So this is why I've left that a little bit thicker than the final thickness, because I need to cut the radius on here, and that's I'm bringing you in to show you this. This is the ground surface of the joiner table. It is 100% dead flat. And you see that little space? That is the radius we're talking about. And when I put my thumb on there and I press, you can see what happens? So essentially what we have now, when we put the glue on here, we will have an ultra-fine suction cup of glue. And that's why I've never had one of my bridges lift. And this comes in really handy when you're putting a vintage bridge on that's been under tension for half a century. That top is never going to be flat. So by having a slightly exaggerated radius, a 24-foot spherical radius, then this is what we end up with. And you can see we still got a little bit of real estate here. I'm going to round those ends off a little bit. That's why I left the bridge a little thick, because I needed enough room to cut that radius. There are 2 things we have determined now. We have the exact footprint of our replacement bridge, and we'll clean up the soundboard to fit. Now when I put that straight edge and I slide up to the bridge, that straight edge just kisses. And on the bass side, same thing. After the bridge is glued in place, I'll calculate the fret scale, we'll slot the bridge, put a cantilevered compensated saddle, through drill the middle 4 holes, and the guitar will be 100%.